So, this is our home place, this is where we all live, and this is what it always looks like, blue sky, sunny. Well, that's what we're used to, of course not. Yeah. So Bergen, as we all know, it has not the best climate, not the best weather, and this is probably also why we are so obsessed with it. And it's actually also why Bergen played a huge role in how we think about weather today and weather forecasting. So usually also this afternoon, probably it looked more like this when you looked out of the window. So I will come back to why it was so interesting and relevant for Bergen to be so catch a capital for weather forecasting. But all of you probably today in particular talked about the weather or were affected by the weather. And in that way, you probably all have an interest in the weather. And you have probably an app on your phone to look at it. You take observations, like the moment you go out of the room, you see what the weather is like. You talk about it, as we just heard. So of course, as I'm a meteorologist, we also talk about the weather, but probably in a more formal way. So this is what the Norwegian Weather Service does. So they take observations, and then your perception that the last few weeks were very exceptional. That's reflected in this. It was very sunny, but you might also remember it's very rainy in the summer and early winter last year. So so we need observations to have an idea what the weather actually looks like. And then we have thermometers. Everyone is familiar with those, and we actually send up balloons to take observations of the atmosphere higher up. And of course, a huge tool is satellites. We take a lot of observations by satellites. You wouldn't believe how many. So with these observations, then we can make a picture of the atmosphere. And sometimes we might need a more detailed look. So this is me in front of a French research aircraft a few weeks ago in Iceland. So then you can tell an aircraft, as a researcher, to go somewhere specific and tell, I need an observation right there. It's very exciting. I can only recommend that. It was very fun. So the only reason we do that is because we want a picture of our atmosphere, what it looks like. So, and this is the whole planet in its all beauty. So atmosphere on our marvelous planet. And then, of course, by looking at it, we can get an idea what kind of processes are at work. So this is actually from one Monday. Now this is a few weeks ago, and this is of course not so nice. That's a real satellite picture. It looks very evil, and it was evil. It was Hurricane Matthew as it hit Haiti, killing a few hundreds of people, and then it moved up north where it devastated the US East Coast. And of course, closer to home here in Norway, we don't have tropical cyclones, but we have extratropical cyclones hitting us, especially now in autumn and winter. And we have something called polar lows, that's Svalbard there. And of course, all this weather affects activities. So if you go on a ship, if you live at the coast, if you want to plan your vacation, if you want to go for a car ride. So you need to be informed about what's going on. So you can take a lot of observations, you can look around, but of course, that will not necessarily tell you what to do tomorrow or next week. So the question is, how do you get from what you observe now to the future? So that's weather forecasting, right? So of course, when you do that, I'm afraid you will need to use a lot of mathematics. So it's mathematics and physics behind weather forecasting, right? But it's in everything, like your phone is mathematics and physics, flying, mathematics and physics, your computer is mathematics and physics, everything is mathematics and physics these days. So we should actually all be a bit in love with mathematics and physics, even if some of you might not want to accept that. So, and of course, we need these mathematics and physics to then make forecasts for example, I was flying today, so we can only fly if there's a forecast. Otherwise, no plane would take off. If you have shipping, if you travel, this was a research ship I was on, very crazy weather. Agricultural planning, you will need a forecast. Or if you have some hailstorm, you will be informed. So the good thing is I scared you a little bit. It's actually only these three equations, but they're complicated enough. Okay. So and then you can look at your planet, and you have to use these equations to then make a forecast. Okay. So and when you do that, you need to put these equations in all these boxes. And this is where this Norwegian comes in. So Wilhelm Bjerknes, who lived in Bergen, or who founded the school, Bergen School of Meteorology here in Bergen, he said, well, if I know the equations, which they knew at the time, and I have observations, I can sit down and calculate the weather for tomorrow. Of course, he actually never did that, because you need a lot of people doing that. So it's very complicated, and even if it's so many people, and there was a British group who did that actually, and they tried to make a forecast, and of course it took them weeks to calculate the forecast for tomorrow, and it was utterly wrong. So I wouldn't say it was a success, and at that time actually people thought it's impossible to make a forecast. But luckily in the mid-20th century we invented the computer. So this is a computer, even though you might not believe it. It's called a supercomputer. It's one in the US. And it's about 1 million times as powerful as your laptop at home. So we use these computers today, and actually the largest computers these days are used by weather forecasting centers or climate centers to forecast the weather. So now we have this computer, we can stuff our equations in there so we don't have to deal with it ourselves. We put all the observations in, and then Bjerknes stream comes through, and we get a forecast. Now, of course, the observations we use will be a lot, so there's actually 300 million observations used every day. And then you produce 8 terabytes of data, so that's like 1,000 times your smartphone of data every day, and then you can make beautiful plots. And as a meteorologist, I get very obsessed by this. This is the forecast for now, done on Monday, so it rains a lot on the Norwegian west coast, which I think is true. So, so this is the success story of this. Of course, you probably don't want to look at these complicated charts. This is what everyone is used to. You open your app and you get a very nice tool. So of course, this also needs some thinking about how to visualize it, how to make it accessible for everyone. So the next time you open your app or you look at the forecast, you should be aware that how much data, 300 million data, everyday observations, and then all this computer power, actually in a power plant almost to run these computers. And then these wonderful meteorologists that write the forecast if you care about your safety and put it out there for you. So thank you for your attention.